Let me see. Go to mode. Okay. Do you see the word mode next to the second button?
Yeah.
Hit it. And you should see radians or degrees. I think yours is in radians, right?
Yeah.
So scroll down to it and arrow over so it's in degree. Okay, so guys, if we're going to find degree measurements given radians or radian measurements given degrees, it's our pi over 180, 180 over pi. What we want, what we're going to should be in the numerator. What we want to cancel out should be in the denominator. So if I start off with 60 degrees and I'm going to radians, should I have pi over 180 or 180 over pi? Pi over 180 because I want the degrees to cancel out. So zeros cancel out. How many times does 6 go into 18? 3. So 6 goes into here once, 6 goes here. So you have pi over 3. That's simple. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Okay, so if I have 330 degrees, that means I want to go to radians. So radians is on top, right? So the zeros will cancel out. Guys, don't do 33 divided by 18 in your calculator and then give me a decimal. What number goes into both 33 and 18? 3. 3 goes into 33 11 times. 3 goes into 18 6 times, right? Does anything go into 11 and 6? No. So just leave it as 11 pi over 6. Make sense? What's b underneath going to be? Negative what? 11 pi over 6. That negative sign doesn't change your calculations. It just tells you the direction of the angle. This one starts at the x-axis and goes around this way. This one starts at the x-axis and goes which way? The opposite direction, like that. It just tells you direction. Yes, ma'am. All right, so here, guys, we're in degrees. We want to go to radians. So 180 goes on the bottom. Well, what goes into both 135 and 180? Try 5. What's 135 divided by 5?
27.
How much?
27.
So negative 27. And what's 180 divided by 5? 36, okay. Is there a number that goes into 37 and 26? 27 and 36? 9, right? 9 goes in here, negative 3. 9 goes in here, 4. So what's my answer? Negative 3 pi over 4. Good. Any questions? If I did 5, right, 180 goes on the bottom, pi on top. What happens? 5 goes into 5 how many times? Once. 5 goes into 180 how many times? 36. So my answer is pi over 36. This should be fairly easy, guys. Now here, we're going to do the opposite, yes? What's my conversion look like?
180 over pi.
180 over pi, because I want the pi's to do what? Cancel out. You can multiply across. So you can do 5 times 180 and get whatever, and then divide it by 2. Or you can cross cancel. 2 goes into 2 once. 2 goes into 180 90 times, right? What's 9 times 5? 45. Then I add my 0. 450 degrees. Is that bigger or smaller than one whole circle? Bigger. Okay, same thing here. The negative doesn't mean anything. I still have my pi on the bottom, the 180 on the top. Pi's cancel out. 6 goes into 6 one time. 6 goes into 180 how many times? 30. So my answer is negative 30 degrees. So if I was going to draw it, instead of starting at the x-axis and going up, I would start at the x-axis and go down. So like that.
You have to know how to do that.
Nope. Here, again, I'm going to degrees. Pi's cancel out. How many times does 4 go into 180?
45.
What's 45 times 9?
405.
405 what? Degrees. Very important that you put your little degree sign. All right? Yes? Okay. How would I do, did I give you guys any of those? All right, let's talk about coterminals. Coterminal. That's when I add and subtract 360, or add and subtract what? 2 pi, depending on what they give me. So if I want a positive and a negative coterminal angle for 72 degrees, how would I find a positive coterminal angle? What would I do? I'm going to add 360. What is 72 plus 360? Plus 360. 432 degrees. Then if I want a negative one from there, I take 72 degrees and I do what? Subtract 360. What's 72 minus 360? Negative 288. There's my negative and my positive. If you're in degrees, guys, you just add 360, subtract 360. It's a little more difficult when you're in radians just because you have to do the pi's. And you guys get a little confused with that, but that's okay. We'll work on it. If I want coterminal angles of, let's say, 2 pi over 3. I want a positive one and a negative one. So if I add a whole circle, I'm adding 2 pi, right? 2 pi is over what number? 1. So I need to have a common denominator. So if I change this to 3, if I multiply by 3 in the bottom, then I multiply by 3 where? On the top. So 3 times 2 becomes 6. So what's 2 pi plus 6 pi?
8 pi.
So your positive coterminal would be 8 pi over 3. If I want a negative one, I'd say 2 pi over 3 minus 2 pi over 1. Again, you need a common denominator. So that 1 becomes a 3. The 2 becomes a 6. So what's 2 pi minus 6 pi? Negative 4 pi over 3. You guys remember that? Shouldn't be too terribly difficult. All right, if I'm looking here and it says find the length of the arc of a circle that has a radius of 8 if the arc subtends the central angle of 1 radian. They're telling you what the measurement is. The central angle, they're telling you it's 1. So I have my formula. It's S equals R times theta. S is the arc length, R is the radius, theta is the angle, the central angle. The central angle has to be in degrees. So if they give it, in radians, I'm sorry. If they give it to us in degrees, what do we have to do? We got to convert it. Did they give it to us in radians or degrees here? Radians. We don't even have to really do anything. It's not real hard. I want to know what the arc length is. So it's S equals R times theta. Okay. Well, what's the radius? 8 times theta, which is, so what is your arc length? 8. That's it. Don't worry about units. All right, here they're asking me in this next one to find the measure of what? The central angle. So here's number 6. S equals R times theta. What do I put where? 5 is the radius because it says the radius is 5. I don't know what theta is. And what do they tell me the arc length is? 7. So how do I get theta all by itself? Divide both sides by 5. So theta equals 7 over 5. That's in radians already. If I asked you to put it into degrees, what would you do? You divide, times it by pi over 180. 180 over pi, sorry. I'm going to give them to you very straightforward, I promise. If I look at 7, a circular arc length of 100 subtends a central angle of 70. Find the radius. Well, let's do it. S equals R times theta. What did they tell me? S is 100. What else did they tell me? Theta is 70 degrees. Can I use that right now? What do I have to do first? Make it into radians. So 7 pi over 18. Agreed? 7 pi over 18 times radius. God bless. You guys agree with me? Okay. Well, how do I get r all by itself? Okay, I agree to divide and I agree to multiply, but if I'm going to multiply, I have to multiply by the what? By the reciprocal, right? If I divide this by 7 pi over 18 and this by 7 pi over 18, I keep, change, flip, right? So I would keep, change, and I'd flip. It'd be 18 over 7, good. And then just simplify. What's 18 times 100? 1800 over 7. Does that simplify at all? No, just leave it then. That's fine. The main thing to remember is that your central angle has to be in what? Radians. All right? If you guys are asked to find the area, there's the area formula. Find the area of the sector. R squared times theta over 2. So, guys, read what they told you. What is R? 5. So it's 5 squared times what? 2 divided by 2. So 25 times 2 is 50. Divided by 2 is? There you go. Look at 11. Find the area of a sector with a central angle of 52. Uh-oh. They told me the central angle is what? 52. Does that help me right now? No, I have to change 52 degrees to what? All right, so what number goes into both 52 and 180? 4. What's 52 divided by 4? Good. What's 180 divided by 4? 45. So 13 pi over 45. So area equals the angle times the radius squared. What's the radius? 200 squared times 13 pi over 45. Guys, don't be afraid of these formulas. Divided by 2. Just work it out. You guys have a calculator. What's 200 squared? 40,000. All right. 13 pi 45 divided by 2. Does 45 go into 40,000? Not pretty, right? No. Okay. So what goes into both 45 and 40,000? 5? Yeah. All right. What's 40,000 divided by 5? 8? Yeah. All right. What's 45 divided by 5? 9? All right. So you're left with 8,000. What's 8,000 times 13? You can simplify all this. Yeah, because you're multiplying the top here. 104,000, right? Yes? Pi over 9 divided by 2. So what are you really doing? Keep, change, flip, and flip the page. 104,000, right? Over 9 times 2. You get some crazy numbers. Don't worry about it. You have a calculator. What's 104,000 times 2? 208,000 over 9. Big numbers, no big deal. I'll give you guys those formulas. I'm not going to make them crazy huge. No big deal. Yeah.
Why did you multiply the 2?
Why did I?
Yeah.
Because they had a fraction already, so we did keep, change, flip.
Oh.
All right, what I really want to focus on, I want you guys to focus on, is solving the triangles. Okay, you guys have to know all 6 trig functions, and you have to know how to use your calculator for the trig functions. So if you have something like this, guys, you already know the angle measures. I know one of them is how much? 90. I know the other one is how much? 40. So what's 90 plus 40? 130. So what's the leftover angle? 50 degrees. You didn't have to figure that out because they gave you a piece of information that will help you. But that's how you find the missing angle if you need to. But just with what they gave us, I can find x and y. Here is my angle that I'm referencing, 40 degrees, yes? And what did they give me? What is 5? It's the hypotenuse. How do you know it's the hypotenuse? It's across in the right angle. So if I wanted to find what y was, what is y in reference to 40 degrees? Is it the opposite or the adjacent? Opposite. What is x? Adjacent. So if I wanted to solve for y, what is the function that I would use that uses opposite and hypotenuse? Sine. You would say sine 40 equals y over 5. Sine of 40 equals y over 5. And then we just cross multiply. So 1 times y is y. Then you have 5 times the sine of 40. So in your calculators, guys, what is 5 times the sine of 40? Three point what? Check your calculator to make sure it's in degrees. 5 times the sine of 40.
3.21.
3.21. Yep. Now if I wanted to find x, what's the trig function that uses adjacent and hypotenuse? What is it? So you would say cosine 40 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So in this case, you'd have x equals 5 times the cosine of 40. You should not get the same answer, guys. It's a different trig function. So 5 cosine 40 equals what? Yep, 3.83, something like that. Good. You have to know your trig functions, sine, cosine, tangent. And they're opposite. So if I came over here, right, what's the angle that they gave me? 35 degrees. So in reference to 35, what is y? The opposite, good. And what is x? The hypotenuse. So if I was trying to find y with what they gave me, what's 2? 2 is adjacent, good. So what would I use? How would I find out what y equals? What uses opposite and adjacent? Tangent. So I would say tan 35 equals opposite over adjacent. So in your calculators, you have y equals 2 times the tangent of 35. What is that? 2 tangent 35. What'd y'all get?
1.40.
Yes, ma'am. And then if I wanted to find x, how do you find x? What would x be? What trig function would you use for x? What uses adjacent and hypotenuse? Cosine. So it would be cosine of 35 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. This is a little different, guys. So I have 2 equals x times the cosine of 35. How do I get x by itself? Yep, by the cosine of 35. Cosine of 35 is just a number. It's a decimal. So instead of writing out the whole crazy long decimal, you just write cosine of 35. So in your calculator, hit 2 divided by cosine 35. What do you get? 2.44. Good. You need to be able to solve triangles, guys. I'm doing a video right now. Oh, this is again solving the triangles. Okay, what about... All right, let's look at 24. I want you guys to tell me all 6 trig functions. First of all, let's go through and talk about them. What are the 6 trig functions? You have sine, which is what? Opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is Good. Now our reciprocal functions. The reciprocal of sine is cosecant. You guys need to know that. It's what over what? H over O. Good. What's the reciprocal of cosine? Secant. Hypotenuse over adjacent. And then tangent is cotangent. So it's adjacent over opposite. They gave me two of the sides already. How can I find the last side? The Pythagorean theorem. Because if I know it's a right triangle, I know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So my legs are 12 and 5. I'm looking for the hypotenuse. Doesn't matter if you put 12 first or 5 first. You just have to make sure that you know those are the legs. So it's 144 plus 25 equals c squared. What's 144 and 25? 169. What's the square root of 169? 13. Now you know all the pieces of information. So let's just use this angle. We're looking in regards to A. In regards to A, 13 is my hypotenuse, right? What's 5? My opposite. And what's 12? My adjacent. Once you guys have all that labeled, filling this stuff out is really easy. What would the sign of this be? 5 over 13, which means my cosecant would be 13 over 5. So cosine is 12 over 13, which means my secant would be 13 over 12. And then tangent would be 5 over 12. So my cotangent would be perfect. You guys need to know all 6 of those trig functions. You need to be able to say, oh, okay, what would happen if I came out, I simplified, and I got like 2 over root 7? Can I leave it like that? No. What do I have to do with root 7? I got to rationalize top and bottom by root 7. So it would be 2 root 7 over 7. Don't forget that. All right, one more. You guys are going to have a word problem. It may have a picture, it may not. You need to understand, guys, when they give you these word problems, they're asking you to find the height of the building and all this stuff. They're going to give you something that forms a right angle. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a right triangle. And now I have to be able to label my picture. It says the ladder is leaning against the side of a New York City building at the angle of elevation from the ground to the top of the building, 46 degrees. Guys, which line is the ladder leaning against the building?
Oh no, the line that's in the angle.
Correct.
They meant the building.
So here's the ground, right? You guys agree that this is the ground?
Yeah.
And that is the ladder, correct? So the angle of elevation, that means from the ground up, is 46 degrees. Do you see why 46 would go right here? Okay. It says that the building is 52 feet tall. Which side is 52 feet? The one with the right angle, the up and down, the height. So they're asking you 2 different questions. The first question asks you, how long is the ladder? Well, in regards to 46, what is 52? Opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? Opposite. So they're going to ask you to solve this triangle twice. You're going to find 2 different sides. If I'm finding the ladder, what am I looking for? The hypotenuse or the adjacent side? The hypotenuse. It's always the longest one across from the right angle, right? So what trig function uses opposite and hypotenuse? Sine. So to solve letter A, you would say sine 46 equals 52 over the hypotenuse, whatever. Just call it x, I don't care. We'll call it x.
Did Jordan put her into class?
Yes, ma'am. So guys, if I cross multiply, what's 1 times 52? 52 equals x times the sine of 46. The sine of 46 is a number. If that was 3x equals 52, you'd divide both sides by 3. So here you're just going to divide both sides by what? The sine of 46. So x equals, how long is this ladder? In your calculator, hit 52 divided by sine 46. I just made these numbers up, so it may not make, well, yeah, it makes sense. How long is the ladder about?
72 feet long.
About 72.28, so about 72 feet tall. Okay. Now, letter B is asking you a different question. Same building, same ladder, but B is saying, how far away from the base of the building is the ladder placed? What piece of information are they asking me for now? How far away is the ladder from the bottom of the ladder to the bottom of the building? Which piece is that? The horizontal piece, the adjacent piece, right? They're looking for this. We'll call this one Y. So what trig function, guys, uses opposite and adjacent? Tangent. So you say tangent 46 equals the opposite side is 52 over the adjacent side, which was what we're looking for. So we're doing the same exact process, but the trig function changes because we're looking at a different piece of the triangle. Does that make sense? Divide both sides by what? Tangent 46. And I get y equals, well, what's 52 divided by the tangent of 46? About 50 feet. But do you guys understand how they were asking for two different pieces of information? Yes. Okay. All right, your test is not going to be super long because some of these questions take a bit of time, 10, 12 questions, something like that. But you can use the calculator, so please make sure you come to class with one. I'll post this video by the end of the day. I may not do it right now, but I will post it before hopefully 3 o'clock, so you guys will have it. So it's, whoops, the sine.